from that particular coach or mentor. And therefore, when you have collaborative leadership forums like this, and this is of course not the only one, but there are of course many others, but what you end up getting is very much of a 360 view from different industries, from different countries, from different verticals, etc. And so this is the type of thing that
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Actionable ESG Talks series, brought to you by AKFI, Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first nonprofit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. My name is Isabella. I am the co-host of this talk series, together with Manuel, another co-host, and our today's special guest, Deep. Hello, Deep. How are you doing?
Hi, Isabella. Hi, Manuel. Thanks for having me on the show. So I'm doing very well, thanks, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So thanks to this talk series, we get to connect with brilliant thinkers, great minds to together discuss the current state and the future state of sustainability, ESG, and digital transformation in general. And before we start, always happy to give our audience a quick brief of our special guest. And Dr. Deep is the CEO of Collaborative Forum. He is a seasoned executive and advisor to the top ranks of Fortune 500 companies, including names such as Unilever, Legos, IBM, and among others. And he is a successful serial entrepreneur, which I'm hugely related to. Love to engage with different kinds of entrepreneurs, seeing the future, broaden my mentality. His business experience includes ESG business strategy and models, business operations and process management, design thinking and service design, large-scale consumer research and analytics, multi-sided marketplace platforms, blockchain-based platforms, and customer centricity. That's a lot of things we can elaborate here today on our talk, based on your experience, and can't wait to hear all of these things from, tons of your entrepreneurial work with worldwide businesses and leaders. And so usually we'll start a conversation with a relatively broad and creative kind of topic, just to see what's your take on the future. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your perspective on the disruptive changes today driven by technologies and the new landscape of ESG awareness, and looking beyond the 2023 and even more.
Perfect. So thanks very much for the question. I think, when you look at digital technology and sustainability, I think you need to think about how you want to frame these two things. In many ways, you have companies that frame these items as a destination, as a strategic sort of destination where they want to get to, and others frame it as a catalyst. A lot of companies who are very short-term thinking view them as a destination. The longer term, the better way to view these items is as a catalyst. To clarify, the end goal is not digital, and the end goal is not just achieving some milestone in sustainability, but is in fact to make digitalization and sustainability a way of working to achieve larger strategic ambitions. Yeah. So it's no matter if it's efficient operations through digitalization, or if it's in fact embedding the ethos of ESG into the DNA of the organization, that's the bigger perspective in order to get there. And these initiatives are simply catalysts on the roadmap to that destination. Yeah. A little bit, if I can get it a little bit more detail around digital technology, it can be simple or complex, and I have clients across this whole spectrum. So on the very simple side, it can be things like companies implementing, Excel spreadsheets to catalog
Mhm.
information for CSRD and that sort of stuff. In the middle of the spectrum, it's more sort of where a lot of companies are going today, and these are companies that are investing in technologies like Brightest or Greenamy, and these are the databases or the tools, platforms that help you tag information automatically so that it knows what metrics it flows into and if it's being measured the right way or not, right? So you have those folks in the middle of the spectrum. And then I have a couple clients which are sort of on the other side of the spectrum completely, where it's much more complex. So I have a client which has or is in the process of implementing blockchain, and in fact, it's a permissioned ledger and a proprietary cryptocurrency that's used within the enterprise ecosystem that enables the organization to track and audit each transaction within the enterprise. And it tracks metrics accordingly. So it can do optimizations across the value chain, across the ecosystem, because it has all these tags and all this information along the way. And therefore, reporting becomes a complete non event at the end of the year because they've been tracking and auditing and then have the trail of all this information, right? So,
Mhm.
so that's the other end of the spectrum. And what you find is that, a lot of larger companies I work with are, have been sort of embarking on this journey for a while now, but they're still sort of on the lower end of the spectrum. Where I'm really concerned about is the small to mid-sized enterprises who form something like 70 to 80% of the GDP of most EU economies, and who are not even evangelized about ESG yet. And most of them are like, ESG, what? How do you spell that, right? And so that's in terms of the digital technology space. And then from a sustainability space, there will continue to be a lot of talk. But thanks to, in fact, some of the outcomes of COP27, the necessary, the funds are being made available for people to start taking on the structural transformation to change the operating practices and mindsets of these companies. And so, this is of course a very important thing. And yeah, so that's that. And of course, at this point, governance becomes critical because it's easy to misuse all these funds. But if they're used in the right way, I think it can be very, very effective. The way I see it is, in terms of where things are going and where we want to go, sustainability is a journey, as I said, and I sort of like to break it down into three pieces. And the first piece is, for the lack of a better phrase, let's call it sustainability 1.0, right? This is it's the chips at the beginning of your poker game. Yeah, you have to play to enter the game. And essentially this gets players into the game. It's about adaptation and conformance, right? So that's the focus, that's the mindset. It's about, have I checked the boxes? The motivation is still wrong at this point, but at least it gets you to do the things about checking the boxes, right? And so that's a start. And where this goes is that it's, you can get into the game with a minimal amount of investment and not too much of a fuss. It's about stakeholder mapping and engagement. It's about simple governance frameworks, about materiality assessments, about, the starting point of reporting through manual means, data cataloging, those kinds of things, right? And starting the dialogue with your stakeholders. Next comes sustainability 2.0, right? Which is more about adoption and reconfiguration. What do I mean by this? It gets players thinking about, the transformation that's necessary to be an ESG centric actor, right? It has, of course, implications on their ecosystem capabilities, their process architecture, operating models, business models, all that good stuff. And then finally, sustainability 3.0 is once you start implementing and moving beyond the sort of tick the box routine, it's really about changing mindset. It's about changing leadership style. It's about engagement with communities. It's about engagement, across the board. It's about creating education, jobs, things like not just environmental things, but around social currency, around social values. And I think that's the part around transparency and governance, which is really, really interesting. And that's kind of where we need to go in sustainability 3.0. Clearly, it's a long-term goal.
So, uh, you open a Pandora box of questions for me. So let me try first to summarize because I feel like throwing 10 different perspectives at what you said. But I'll start with the distinction you made between sustainability short term and long term. And actually, everybody talks about a journey, but I haven't, in my experience, I haven't noticed people, or maybe they said it, looking at it as a catalyst. And the catalyst plays a very important role because it enables the reactions in chemistry, in a strictly
Yep.
chemistry, enables the reaction, but the quantity you put in is equal to the quantity you put out. And the reaction is we use catalysts, of course, to create positive reactions. We create
Hmm.
it's like a leverage tool.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I think that's very important. Then you went into the digital transformation and you sort of created the almost three layers world from people using digital. I won't even call it a transformation to a profound transformation. And I'll have a question about this internal cryptocurrency. Maybe you give us a little bit of insight in a second. And the third part, this sustainability 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, again presents a very clear perspective. And I'll focus more, the second question will focus more on 3.0 because that's where the future lies. I think we
Hmm.
are, implementing 1.0 and part of 2.0 already. So first question, going back a little bit. Uh, Tell us a little bit more what you think about the component, the way the sustainability and digital transformation come together in what you experience. And the second, we'll look at this crypto model, which sounds
Sure.
very, very futuristic, and try to use it to
Sure.
gauge the future.
When we have digital transformation, it really starts to so it plays at the periphery in sustainability 1.0, right? It's an enabler for information management. Digital transformation is again, it's a catalyst to collect data, to drive actions through this information, right? And so it plays sort of at the rim, and it sort of gets you the right information you need to get to. And to my earlier point, it's not about the digital. It's about what the digital gives you, right, and what it enables you to do, and that part. And so the core, in fact, of digital transformation should come in sustainability 2.0, because effectively it's an organizational transformation that you're going through, right? When I talk about adoption and reconfiguration, it's a complete reconfiguration of the business. Now, I had the opportunity to work with Unilever many years ago when they were going through this type of transformation. And it was incredible how they put ESG really front and center of their business model, and they carved everything around it, right? And so in one of my interviews, I interviewed the vice president of the ice creams division, and he mentioned that their chocolate, because it was sustainably sourced, was costing them a lot more, and they were unable to pass the cost on to the consumer until actually recently, where the consumers are willing, in fact, to pay a premium to know where their chocolate is coming from, to know that the chocolate has been growing sustainably, to know that the families of the cocoa farmers, the cacao farmers, are being taken care of and being educated, and that in fact the community has gotten together to put forward this crop, right? And the community is being supported by these companies. And so, yes, there are many scandals in different parts of the world around this sort of stuff. And again, this is where the governance part comes in. But it was incredibly forward thinking of Unilever to realize at that point, many, many years ago, that this is in fact the key thing. Also worked with folks from Starbucks on their, I didn't work on it directly, but I came to know of their program called cafe, which is all about, it's all about sustaining the communities that plant and grow the coffee, which Starbucks is then able to buy. So using long-term contracts for the purchase of this coffee beans, not using spot pricing and not using large player leveraging techniques against the small farmers. Those are the types of things that really need to be, front and center of these business models.
Oh, excellent. And actually, as we move toward the question on 3.0, of course, you're pointing already to the long supply chains that these multinational companies, global companies project. We are actually taking on a white paper in AKFI to study the supply chain, and actually we're focusing on the and you mentioned already about the small medium companies. The fact that actually there are submitted to additional burdens from different companies, let's say Nestle and Unilever, two competitors, right? And they have completely different requirements, different vision about sustainability, different implementation, and so on. And now you are a small cocoa farmer in Africa, and you have to produce data, for sustainability for one, data for sustainability for the second one. They ask also about your own sustainability plans, right? And you have to comply also with governmental rules so you are in what I'll call it double, triple, quadruple jeopardy when all these big questions come to you from left and right. Any comments, any visibility about that?
Yeah, in fact, it's a very interesting question, and I know there's a few players in Europe who are trying to get around this problem. But I think where it ends up being is that the larger companies have to take ownership of that problem themselves. That if they truly have a partnership relationship versus a vendor relationship, it's all well and good for Unilever or Nestle to go to a big global player like Bosch, for example, who might make their machines and whatever, and ask them for the data sliced in 100 different ways. But it's not acceptable to ask the farmer that because it's another form of oppression and leverage that they're trying to do. And so truly, if they have these partnership relationships, then in fact, the IT departments of these companies can make it easier for these folks to enter the data. And in fact, you have a few places in Nigeria where, in fact, where some of the farming cooperatives that they have locally, that I know of, one is for cassava and corn and a few other grains that they have there. The platform itself has been created by people. In fact, some of the primary players include the telecom industry, because most of this data is entered by handheld, right? And so it's the telecoms of the world who have something to provide their support and expertise in as far as these folks go.
Absolutely. And, I've been in telecom industry all my previous career. And actually, as you're going through that, I sort of a link clicked in my mind, and this is you do not need to ask the farmers to collect the data. You have IoT, you have the capability as a large company to use technology to obtain automatically the data, real time, at low cost, as you said, and essentially take the farmer's burden out of this equation completely.
Absolutely, Mark. That's absolutely right, Manuel. Yeah.
So I tend to monopolize these conversations, and Isabella knows that. You can see her smiling, but I'll turn to Isabella for the next question.
No. This is also good. Don't break the flow, Manuel. Continue. I can see you have more to ask. Feel free. This is your topic. I can see that. I don't want to jump in with a different direction, and I can see a good flow here.
Well, I think we can talk a long time about that, but I was going to ask you, you met hundreds and over 1,000 executives, and especially in these mid-sized to large companies, these global companies, they do really leave a footprint on the impact on transformation process, on the impact on society. So, are any lessons you can share with us on what these executives are thinking? How are they acting? Are they changing? Three questions in a row.
Perfect. Okay. So let's do this. So first of all, let me just underline. So my primary engagement has been more with senior executives who are in the C-suite or they're in their sort of direct reporting circles. So I'll restrict my comments to those folks and just because I'm familiar with that group. So in terms of sort of the personal developments, right? So one of the things in my role at the CEO Collaborative Forum, what I see is, that um, senior leaders are looking to collaborate because the consultants don't have the answers. The experts have some answers in very point specific ways, right? But when you need to look at the bigger picture, it's all experiential learning. Therefore, collaboration becomes more and more important. And so what we also see is that the CSR departments, a lot of these companies, and the HR folks, they're very interested in the development and coaching of middle management and junior staff. But then they're sort of out of their water when they're talking about senior leaders and how do you do personal development of a CEO, right? Because you've sort of on paper you've reached the top, so there is nowhere else to go. But that doesn't mean that they're the best leader that they can be, right? And so you can have these individual coaches for these folks, but what ends up happening is that you're exposed to like one point of view from that particular coach or mentor, and therefore when you have collaborative leadership forums like this, and this is of course not the only one, but there are of course many others, but what you end up getting is very much of a 360 view from different industries, from different countries, from different verticals, etc. And so this is the type of thing that these senior leaders are looking for, so that they can in fact learn more about these types of problems or these types of issues like digitalization and sustainability and all of that, and in fact even just simply personal development, right? And so they're relying a lot more on these collaborative forums to be able to become better leaders. And it also results in very long lasting friendships over time that they can count on, for their growth and development over time. So that's the first question. Now, your second question around business growth, right? Um, I had a very interesting conversation recently with Jamie Horst, who's the chief purpose officer of a company called Traditional Medicinals, which is a California-based health and wellness company. When we're talking about growth, right? And she said, the only things that grow exponentially and perpetually in nature are things that are not good, with things like weeds and cancer and bacteria, right? This is growing perpetually and exponentially is not natural, and we need to change our mindset about this sort of vision of endless growth, right? And so there's a term that's been coined around mindful growth, right? And mindful growth is it's and I think we're going to see more of this in the years to come. But mindful growth is making executives change their perspective through widening their lenses from enterprise to ecosystem, right? And of course, ESG principles are partly responsible for this because of scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, and which needs to look at the whole value chain and not just the four walls of the enterprise. But this is the type of thing that this mindful growth is becoming more important because companies want to understand why they're growing and who they're growing for and how is it going to benefit the population as a whole and the planet as a whole, when you have this type of growth, and what's it going to do for you. So it's really growing more in terms of richness of product, richness of offerings, right? But consuming less, right? And having these products for a longer time. So, using a typical, the kind of like a donut framework, those types of things, right? So using those types of frameworks more to say, this is not an endless game, right? So that's one part about growth. And then the third part about societal impact of your transformations, it's been traditionally viewed in very small ways, right? So, a group of senior leaders goes and paints the wall of a school on a Sunday afternoon. That's the typical CSR type of thing that people have done so far. Now, it's only now through this ESG lens that executives are reconsidering this type of traditional program, and actually map out who the stakeholders are, map out who is it that they're impacting, whether intentionally or unintentionally, right? And start to get those people into into their way of thinking, and to have some sort of a co-created view of that future, right? And so I know this sounds very idealistic and all that, but when you start having larger companies making these types of effort, reaching out to the communities, really creating the underpinnings for the communities to prosper and flourish, like the CEO of I think it was Chobani. I forget his name now. He's from Turkey originally, but he speaks a lot about this, about engaging the community, into your growth plans and into your universe of growth, right? So this is where societal impact will come. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but as they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So if a lot of companies start making those steps, then we can achieve something.
Oh, deep. We're covering deep a lot of mileage. But I wanted to stop for a second and mention actually that looking at the future and looking at this exponential growth of the future, Isabella authored a book this summer, her first book, and it's about the future, and it's about the digital mind of tomorrow. And I was sort of having this, apocalyptic view of AI growing out of control. and I think in her book, Isabella, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but in your book, you're asking lots of questions about the future and this kind of growth, that Deep mentioned, and in reference to the traditional medicine, I think was the name of the company.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I think the question that we ask, it's what ultimately leads us to the solution that we're seeking. So nowadays, I found it more than ever relevant to ask more questions than rushing to find a solution or to reach to a conclusion. Let's find an end result, like you mentioned, Deep. And especially in this new age, that there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of, potentials that we can grow. This co-creation has been in my zone radar for a while, and I think it's apparently a lot of them are from Europe. Like I heard a lot of these kind of concept in different form, but the core value is to co-create a future, appreciate the community power to give equal access to all the talents, removing the middle age and things like that. So I do believe that's a huge potential out there. And I'm also very keen to tackle the challenges in order to reach to that stage. So what are the common challenges you see, Deep, when, facing these kind of transformative approach, especially with executives, the large corps where they have a strong foundation for what has been working for decades, even centuries. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Isabella, and thanks. That's of course it's a multi-dimensional answer, but I think it starts with, I'll refer back to the sustainability 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 piece. The people are trained to, use a fact-based approach. Well, what happens when you don't have facts? Right. And so the first job starts to become, we need to collect those facts, right? I don't know of what my diversity and inclusion profile looks like unless I actually count people, right? And so in a very
Your
simple way,
data.
that's yeah, I
Mhm.
need data. I need something to go with because I have no idea how to set targets, how to set goals. That's what I'm paid for as a manager. But if I have nothing to set my goals based on, I'm sort of floundering, right? So it's starting with that, and so that's why I think companies are making a decent amount of headway on that in trying to collect the data that they need in order to set that path forward. I don't think executives are against this type of transformation. I think they just don't know enough about it, right? And they need more people like yourselves to guide them through what these steps look like. What will they see along the way, right? What does the journey look like? Where are the uphills? Where are the downhills, right? And to sort of plot the course for them. Once this happens,
Mhm.
then I think executives are very good at taking charge of a transformation and driving that transformation. They know how to do that. They've done that in the past, right? We just have to set them in the right sort of direction and sort of annotate it, annotate the right things to do accordingly. For instance,
Mhm.
in this project I was working on in the last few months, it was with a large company in Sweden, and they said, yes, we want to be sustainable, but what do we do? Right? And so it was more about, okay, so things don't happen until the changes are made at the ground level. It's all very easy to put forward a PowerPoint on a website which shows all the wonderful colors of the SDG goals, but how do you really make that happen, right? And it's
Mhm.
the boots on the ground thing that they're lacking. And so when we said, listen,
Mhm.
okay, let's break down your process for your procurement manager, for example, when they have to buy product, right? What are the criteria that they use to buy product? Oh, they use location and price and tariffs and whatever, whatever. I said, okay, suppose we add five more things on there where you look at their labor standards. How do they treat the communities that they belong in? Do they pay enough taxes? Are they good people, et cetera, right? And what are you doing to promote education in that community and along those ranks? So if you can capture, it's just another five questions. But if this becomes a part of the standard operating manual of the procurement manager, only then will sustainability be implemented in that process of procurement. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. The CEO can shout as loud as he or she wants, but it ain't going to happen. And so this is there's a sort of combination of high level evangelism that needs to happen, as well as boots on the ground implementation that needs to happen to make this into something more real.
Amazing. I agree.
And excellent. Uh, you know, three questions back or four questions back, you gave us an example about what I thought it's an internal currency in the form of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I captured the idea, so please give us a little
Sure,
bit
sure.
more
So
about
if
it.
I'll tell you as much as I can, but it's not going to be too much more. So essentially, let me put it as an example. Using this procurement again, right? This example. So imagine that you have your cryptocurrency internally, right? And because it's working on a permission blockchain, you're able to capture whatever information you want to about that transaction, right? And so, for example, the moment I got vendor who is providing me with, let's say, herbal tea, right? Well, I have to provide, I need to, if I'm making herbal tea, I need to buy the herbs, I need to buy the tea, I need to buy the tea bag, I need to buy the little string, the little label, and I have to put it all into a box, right? And so when I go to buy the tea or go to buy those herbs from some vendor in rural Rajasthan in India, right? Now, because that vendor is in my network, and I have the information that's tagged uh, based on what are their labor standards, what are the social norms, what are the wage rates that we pay, what's the competition in benchmarking and all that. All that information is captured. What are the emissions per tea bag that's happening? It's all captured, right? And because it's all captured, every dollar that I spend on that particular vendor, it captures all of this necessary information about that $1 that's being spent. And so this dollar is tagged, if you will, with all of this rich information about who the vendor is, where the product is coming from, how much do I buy, all of these labor standards, etc., all linked to that. And as that dollar goes through my network, right? It gets aggregated, it gets formulated from the production side. I see how many emissions I have for that one tea bag that I make. And so for every dollar, which is the sort of standard currency in that platform, every dollar I have all of this wonderful 360 enriched information for each dollar that I'm spending. Right. And so therefore, at the end of the day, it's just a question of aggregating this information. And I can, because of the blockchain, I can tag, I can track, I have the audit trail of every single transaction that has happened. Right. And so I don't convert it into real dollars until the very end when I have to pay that vendor, and until the very end where the customer pays me, right, for that one tea bag. But internally, I've captured all of this information through my own cryptocurrency. Right? So the cryptocurrency is just used as a tagging device and as an aggregating agent, not for speculation, not for any of that stuff, but in fact, the true sense of why blockchain is important,
Sure.
to capture and convey all this information and leave the trail of the transactions that happened.
And that leads me to sort of the next step where you move and you execute automatic contracts with
Exactly.
Ethereum-like functionality.
Right. So once they get the folks up to, so it'll probably roll out I would say in a couple of years with a few select larger customers and vendors and all that. I mean, we have no standards in blockchain today, so everyone's using something else, including the logistics providers and all that, which is why it's still internal, right? And so there's no standard that they can use today that's outside.
And that connects very well with the previous discussion we had on supply chain and how to, make sure that you don't put extra burden on the long tail of the supply chain, right? The
Yes,
farther removed from the requirements, the more, more pile up. So
exactly.
that's a very good example on how to approach it with digitalization, digital transformation, and I can see this even being normalized. And in our example, we used Nestle and Unilever, and they can use the same tokens when they have the same supplier. You allow
Exactly.
through APIs to exchange the information, and in
Exactly.
this way, they don't, burden the supplier with or pester her or him with tons of questions, right?
It's true. It's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Um, Isabella, maybe I know time is is flying when you have fun, and I think I hope Deep has a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot from
Absolutely.
him.
Yeah. I am too. Thank you.
So, would you like the next question? We're going to talk about make our future for a few minutes.
Sure. So I can give you a bit of a overview of that. So Make Our Future is basically it's a consulting cooperative, right? And it's one of the first of its kind. Our objective is twofold. One is to have an impact, and two is to make consulting more equitable and transparent than the traditional model. So basically, we are a global consulting cooperative to transition organizations to more sustainable and equitable practices. And our mission is to co-create, again, that word again, Isabella, to co-create better futures with our clients and stakeholders together, right? And so it's a people-first organization, shared beliefs, ways of being, ways of working, and shared vision. The idea is that we only take projects that we can link directly to ESG metrics, right? So if you want to implement a new ERP system, go ahead and hire the bigger consulting firms. They'll do a wonderful job, but that's not our bag. But if you want to do something about sustainability, that's where we can help you, right? So we're working with a fashion retailer right now to help they make their innovation process to build sustainability into their innovation process. So we have a workshop in Italy next week, and we're doing that with them. And then, the idea is that we don't have employees, we have members. And our members can be smaller consulting firms, they can be independent people, they can be self-employed, whoever's interested in working in this space, right? And so we don't have salaries, but it works on a profit share model. And that profit share formula is based on certain fixed rate cards, and those rate cards are transparent to everybody, including the client. And the clients pay us as a cost plus versus as an opaque fixed fee type of deal, where the partners make all the money and the people in the lower ranks don't get as much. This is much more equitable in that manner. So it provides our members with clarity as to what they're getting, who's sharing what, and part of every dollar that the client spends goes towards an impact project. And the members, they vote on the way the firm operates. They vote on what impact projects we should choose and where we should implement them, what learning gets priority, what should be disseminated. So, members they've got their voting rights as soon as they become members, right? And so our clients really view us as partners, not vendors, because of this transparency, because there's nothing opaque about any of this stuff. So that's that. So we're sort of off to a running start, and we have our co-founders are everywhere from San Francisco to Manila, and we operate everywhere in between. So
Thank you very much. And I think today you are in Ghent, right, in Belgium.
I am in Belgium, yes.
So the country of chocolate, mussels, and beer, right?
Yes, and it's also becoming, surely it's becoming sort of country of a lot of co-creation projects, a lot of
I was going to
sustainability
say
forward
that.
initiatives. Yes,
Of
A
course.
country of co-creation.
And you have the Brussels, European Parliament.
of
Well,
course, yes.
I think the Parliament is actually split, right, between Brussels.
It is, but a lot of work happens here in Belgium.
Yep.
So yeah.
Lovely. I'd love to hear more about these ongoing co-creation projects or ideas. Somehow I think it connects with me more than any other things. So love to continue learning this
Absolutely.
concept, and develop based on it.
And
Sure.
we had last week we interviewed Yuan, right? And
Yuan, yes.
He talked about global and local, right?
He's from
Okay.
France, and he's all about co-creation as well.
Yeah.
How to, find
Excellent.
talents. So I guess as we reach to the end, let's wrap up.
Maybe one
the
more
conversation.
question. Maybe
Yeah.
one question we can really quickly, put in, but maybe a short answer. But I was sort of interested on your piece last year about the looming crisis of credibility, and and you were asking, what it takes to get back on track. I think we covered a lot today, but maybe in summary, are we still in a crisis of ESG? Are we getting deeper? Is it more credible?
I'm glad you took the time to read that piece, Manuel, and glad you brought it up. So I'll give you a very short answer. Yes, so there were three things that I highlighted in that article. Were the factors for this looming crisis: lack of common definitions and regulation. Two was the race for ratings. And three is the mismatch of expectations and timeframes, right? So a year later, the first one, I think we have much more definition on, at least in the EU, where we have the reporting standards, the common taxonomy, all of that good stuff. So that's been very, very good and very, very forward-looking. Next is in terms of race of ratings, one of the key players in this company called MSCI, their stock price went from $260 a share in 2020 to $490 a share in 2022. So they're not doing too badly, right? In spite of everything that's happened. So clearly people are still racing for their ratings and they're still getting them from the same sources. So there's more to be done there. But I think because companies are working more towards gathering their own data and creating their own ratings, I think these companies will start to play a lesser role in the 2025 to 2028 range. Okay. And in the last piece, in terms of expectation and time frame, I think companies are beginning to realize that this is a long-term game, and I don't think the shoe is dropped quite yet. So, and you already start seeing it in places like the US, in fact, where you have short-termists think the whole ESG thing is a fool's errand. Some of the folks in the Republican Party are trying to repeal ESG rulings and regulations from many of the states. But I don't think this is going to gain too much momentum. I think the momentum of the global force behind ESG is far too strong for that. But I do think that people are still imminent to come to a reaction where, oh my God, I didn't think this was this big. As they get into sustainability 1.0, they look at the deep valley of sustainability 2.0 and see the work that's headed their way. So I think it's still a looming crisis of credibility to say, "Oh my God, what am I getting myself into?" But I think it will be okay. I think companies will realize that they can in fact tackle this, and that ESG is credible and it's the way to go forward. Especially when companies like Unilever have shown, and in fact even BlackRock, who have over $1 trillion in investment under their management, are showing that having a sustainability premium is a real thing when you do implement principles of ESG. So we're still in danger, but not too much.
Okay, well, that's a positive message to end, and I'll turn it back to Isabella.
Thank you. Thank you for the valuable sharing, nonstop, flow-based and articulate. Thank you so much, Deep, for all your insights. It's
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
It's extremely valuable to our audience, the approach you take, the mentality that you develop and still developing. And we look forward to hear more updates from you and to share with our audience. Thank you again for taking the time. And thank you to all of our audience as well for tuning in. Make sure you join us for every week a new episode of AKFI's Actionable ESG Talk series, where you can gain new perspective and learn how to mitigate risks and create value by integrating ESG and digital transformation. So until the next time, goodbye for now. Bye, Manuel. Bye, Deep. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Deep.
Thank you, Manuel.
Bye, Isabella.
Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you. Thank you
Cheers.
both for a great talk. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.